Have you ever watched a vice president in a $5,000 suit light his own career on fire because he was too arrogant to read a 12-page contract? They called me a bottleneck, a stubborn roadblock strangling their agile new workflow. What Julian failed to understand, what none of them understood, was that I wasn't a roadblock. I was the only deadbolt standing between their $500 million inventory and a federal lockdown. My name is Ree Carter. Until about 20 minutes ago, I was the lead engineer of the cold chain integrity grid for Novartis Biologics, a biotech giant sitting in the freezing, wind-whipped heart of Chicago. We didn't make aspirin. We manufactured experimental gene therapies, compounds that cost more per ounce than flawless diamonds, stored at exactly -80 degrees Fahrenheit inside a biometric fortress I had designed from the ground up. A living system. A defensive architecture governed by the strictest FDA compliance protocols in the industry. I had built it. I knew every tripwire. Julian was our newly appointed VP of supply chain. He had been grown, seemingly, in a corporate laboratory. Custom Italian suit, aggressively white smile, zero background in biotechnology. He genuinely believed supply chain management was identical whether you were moving cheap plastic toys or highly unstable molecular compounds worth $500 million. Tuesday morning. Calendar invite. Subject line, sync and align. No agenda. Just a location, conference room alpha. The fishbowl. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls in the dead center of the executive floor, designed specifically so everyone in the cubicles could watch who was being thrown to the wolves. Julian was already standing when I walked in. Brenda from HR was tucked in the corner, studying her tablet like it held the answers to everything. I knew what was happening before I even pulled out a chair. He leaned forward, both palms on the mahogany table, projecting dominance. We're moving into a dynamic new era. Agile workflows, cross-functional synergies. The market demands speed. I stared at him. Julian, we move biological hazards and experimental drugs. Not software updates. Agility in this field means cutting corners. Cutting corners means dead patients and federal lawsuits. His smile tightened. His eyes went cold. That's exactly the problem. You're a bottleneck. Your rigid adherence to these outdated protocols is strangling our delivery model. Effective immediately, your position is eliminated. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I felt, strangely, completely calm. Julian, I kept my voice level. You cannot just erase me from the system. The FDA mandates hard-coded security protocols for the cold chain grid. I am the designated quality keyholder. The entire architecture is biometrically tied to my personal data. If you remove my access without the legally required handover process, the system will classify it as a hostile intrusion. He slammed his hand on the table. Stop with the scare tactics. It is wiping your credentials right now. Hand over your badge. He extended his palm across the table. Smug, victorious. I thought about the 4-inch titanium blast doors in the subbasement. I thought about the federal tripwires I had coded into the building's digital foundation, tripwires designed to trigger an immediate, irreversible, total lockdown the second any unauthorized personnel attempted a hostile system takeover. I reached into my coat, unclipped my badge, set it gently in the center of the table. Of course, Julian, I said softly. Sitter me optimized. I turned and walked out. I didn't argue. I didn't look back. I just walked toward the elevator, entirely aware that the warehouse of Novartis Biologics was about to become a hostage of the United States government, and Julian had just happily lit the match himself. The wind off Lake Michigan felt different today. For 6 years it had been an obstacle. Today it felt like a baptism. I found a coffee shop 3 blocks down, worn leather armchair in the corner. Dark roast, extra cream. For the first time in over 2,000 days, my phone was completely silent. I took a sip, closed my eyes, I was free. A quarter-mile away, Julian had marched straight to the server room, absolutely determined to scorch the earth behind me. I want her gone, he told the IT technician, a young man named David. Revoke everything. Wipe her out of the directory. Zero trace. David hesitated. The security warnings flanking my profile were hard to miss. He explained that the sub-basement environmental controls were segregated, that the grid required a secondary authorized signature to transfer the keyholder designation. that forcing a hard delete without the mandatory 60-day handover protocol might trigger the system architecture. Julian leaned over the desk. Do your job, force the delete, override whatever warning prompt tells you otherwise. David swallowed hard and hit enter. Deep inside the server architecture, a silent shockwave rippled through the mainframe. The system scanned for transition files. It searched for a replacement retina scan for dual-factor executive sign-off. It found nothing. The logic gate closed. The conclusion was instantaneous and terrifying. The keyholder had not been transferred. The keyholder had been violently removed. The mainframe was under active hostile attack. In the subbasement, the warning sirens erupted. Fluorescent lights snapped off, replaced by pulsing red strobes. And then, the pneumatic pumps engaged with a mechanical roar, and 4-inch solid titanium blast doors dropped from the ceiling tracks and slammed into the reinforced floor, throwing steel deadbolts into place with heavy, final thuds. A black box appeared on David's monitor, glowing red. Critical security event. Hostile intrusion detected. Biometric anchor severed. Initiating quarantine protocol. Beneath it, a timer began counting backward from 4 hours. Julian told maintenance to drill through the doors. When the diamond-tipped industrial drill bit pressed against the reinforced steel housing, the seismic transducers inside the vault registered the vibrations instantly. The AI recalculated. This was no longer an unauthorized intrusion. This was active physical assault. The threat condition elevated to Priority 1, targeted sabotage. The system did exactly what it was built to do. It plunged the vault temperature toward -150, flash freezing the gene therapies into chemical inertia, rendering them useless to anyone trying to steal them. Upstairs, the CEO tried his master override. Access denied. He tried again, locked out entirely. Fancy job titles meant nothing to a machine protecting $500 million in biological assets. Then the audit bots woke up. They scanned the network. They identified a physical breach attempt happening while the entire executive leadership team was present and active. They drew the only logical conclusion: inside job, corporate espionage orchestrated by leadership. They triggered a Level 5 compliance audit, the nuclear option of corporate governance. Every share of Novartis stock owned by any employee, from overnight janitor to CEO, was locked down completely. The bots simultaneously blasted emergency alerts directly to every board member's personal phone. Investors on golf courses, yachts, private dining rooms, all of them buzzing with messages about an active catastrophic biosecurity breach at their flagship facility. I was on my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed with a legal threat from the General Counsel. Multi-million-dollar lawsuit, malicious espionage, grand larceny. They demanded the master decryption key within 15 minutes or they'd have me arrested. They were trying to bully a ghost. I walked home, poured myself a 20-year Kentucky bourbon, opened my employment contract, 60 pages, negotiated and signed 6 years ago, a masterpiece of proactive legal engineering. I highlighted Clause 8.4 on page 42. Hit reply all, copying the board, the CEO, and Julian. I am in receipt of your correspondence demanding the master decryption codes, I wrote. I advise you to retract your threats immediately, as they demonstrate a catastrophic misunderstanding of your own compliance infrastructure. Clause 8.4 was clear. Any termination of the primary keyholder without the mandatory 60-day joint handover automatically activates the integrity defense system. I was now a private civilian with zero contractual obligations to Novartis Biologics. Furthermore, there was no password, no alphanumeric code I could type into an email. The master key was a biometric hash tied to the unique vascular structure of my right retina. I could not surrender my eyeball to the legal department, and as a private citizen, remotely accessing a federally regulated biological containment facility would constitute a federal felony. I respectfully declined. Then I told them about the temperature. Because the maintenance team had drilled into the vault, the system had registered active sabotage and was purging ambient heat. In 3 hours, the molecular structure of the gene therapies would permanently crystallize. $480 million would become worthless, dangerously unstable frozen glass, and no insurance policy in the world would cover a loss triggered by the documented orders of their own vice president. I opened my newly registered LLC portal. Attached a business card. Carter Compliance Solutions. Emergency compliance rescue for high-stakes biometric deadlocks. Due to the time-sensitive and specialized nature of this intervention, emergency rates apply. I attach the invoice. Click Send. 42 minutes later, the executive boardroom called. I let it ring 4 times before I tapped speakerphone. I said nothing. You arrogant, incompetent fool. The CEO wasn't talking to me. He was dismantling Julian in front of the entire board. Julian's voice, when it came, was completely stripped of everything, the confidence, the corporate bravado, all of it gone. He sounded remarkably small. When the CEO finally addressed me, he offered my job back. 20% raise, corner office, Lakeview. You're operating under a fundamental misunderstanding of our current dynamic, I told him. I'm not a disgruntled employee looking for a pay bump. I'm an independent contractor. Refresh your screen. The invoice landed on their laptops. $3.5 million, non-negotiable. Wire transfer required before I put my coat back on. This is extortion, someone shouted. This is dynamic capitalism, I replied. You wanted agile workflows. This is the market rate for an emergency biometric rescue operation. The CFO's voice cut through the chaos. 15 minutes until the automated distress beacon transmitted a red alert directly to the FDA. Federal agents. Stock price 0 by opening bell. Do it, the CEO whispered. Authorize the transfer. Give her whatever she wants. The banking notification chimed as I walked through the front lobby. 3.5 million cleared. I took the elevator down to the subbasement. The red strobes were still pulsing. The air was brutally cold. Julian was there, wrinkled suit, loosened tie, sweating despite the temperature, and he stepped directly into my path. I didn't look at him. I looked at the CEO and raised one eyebrow. The CEO grabbed Julian by the shoulder and shoved him back, then turned to me. Please, 7 minutes. I stepped to the terminal, brushed frost from the scanner lens, positioned my eye. The system rejected me. The board gasped. The CFO grabbed his chest. I stepped back. The system is functioning perfectly, I said. When your crew drilled into this terminal, the AI logged the closest active employee badge to the breach. It recorded the digital signature of the man who gave the order. I turned and pointed directly at Julian. Your vice president of supply chain is currently registered as an active hostile biological threat. The grid will reject my retina scan and keep these doors sealed as long as he exists in your corporate database and remains within 100 feet of this vault. Julian's face went the color of wet ash. The CEO didn't hesitate for a single second. He called HR. Delete him. Right now. Then he snapped his fingers at security. 2 guards grabbed Julian by the arms. The man who had fired me that morning to optimize his workflow was dragged across the concrete floor, his Italian leather shoes scraping helplessly, looking back at me with profound, crushing humiliation. I gave him a polite wave goodbye. 30 seconds later, the network synchronized. I stepped to the terminal. 2 minutes on the clock. The laser swept across my retina. A soft chime. The screen shifted from red to green. Authorized quality keyholder recognized. Quarantine protocol disengaged. The magnetic deadbolts released with a series of heavy, satisfying thuds. The titanium doors hissed open, releasing a wall of white vapor into the corridor. The sirens went silent. The gentle hum of normal refrigeration filled the air. $480 million. Completely safe. The executives slumped against the walls, entirely emptied of their arrogance. They didn't look at me like an insubordinate employee anymore. They looked at me the way people look at something they can't fully comprehend. I pulled my coat tight, turned my back on the open vault, and walked toward the elevator. I had walked into this building 6 years ago as an eager engineer. I was walking out today as a millionaire holding absolute, uncontested power over the life and death of their entire empire. And the best part? They had paid me millions of dollars to teach them a lesson they would never, ever forget.